Ransomware crews kept the pressure on. Multiple vendors pushed fixes, and 5 confirmed incidents and advisories are reshaping what defenders should do next. Here's what matters and how to respond. If you're tracking daily trends, the themes are clear. Patching remains a race against disclosure, and extortion-driven operations continue to test recovery plans. In this briefing, we'll cover a critical controller flaw in commercial facilities, 2 confirmed breaches with downstream impact, a major K-12 vendor incident tied to an extortion group, and a prison sentence for a ransomware access broker that highlights where to harden. First, a critical industrial control risk. A vulnerability in the Pharos control's Mosaic show controller could let an unauthenticated attacker execute arbitrary commands with root privileges. Tracked as CVE 2026-2417 with a CVSS v3 score of 9.8. The issue is described as missing authentication for a critical function and affects Mosaic show controller firmware 2.15.3 used across commercial facilities. This matters because internet-exposed or flat-networked building systems can become high-impact pivot points, enabling adversaries to disrupt lighting, signage, or integrated facility operations with minimal effort. Defender takeaway: inventory these controllers now, remove any direct internet exposure, segment show control and building automation networks, restrict management interfaces to allow listed subnets, and apply vendor updates or mitigations as they become available. Monitor for unusual processes or command execution on affected devices, and document escalation paths if emergency isolation is required. Second, a supply chain privacy hit. HackerOne is notifying hundreds of employees that their data was stolen after attackers compromised Navia, one of its U.S. benefits administrators. The key facts are straightforward. The breach occurred at a third-party provider and resulted in the theft of employee information, and affected individuals are being notified. This matters because HR and benefits platforms often hold concentrated, sensitive data, and a single vendor compromise can ripple across many employers, increasing the risk of targeted social engineering against staff. Defender takeaway: review what data your organization shares with benefits and HR vendors and enforce minimum necessary principles. Confirm those vendors' breach notification and encryption at rest requirements, and prepare comms and protective measures for affected employees, including monitoring for benefits account changes. Train help desks to verify identity with out-of-band checks before honoring payroll or benefits updates. Third, widespread education exposure risk. Infinite Campus, a widely used K-12 student information system, is warning customers of a data breach following an extortion attempt by a threat actor known as Shiny Hunters. The headline context is a vendor breach paired with an extortion claim. Customers have been alerted. This matters because centralized SIS platforms aggregate student, guardian, and staff information, and a compromise at the vendor level can create a broad blast radius across districts. Defender takeaway: districts and education partners should review the vendor's notifications and guidance, rotate keys, tokens, and SSO secrets linked to the platform, enforce MFA on all administrative and teacher accounts, and increase monitoring for unusual access to parent and student portals. Prepare clear communications to staff and families, and validate that data exports, integrations, and APIs are operating with least privilege. Fourth, a notable law enforcement outcome in the ransomware ecosystem. A Russian national was sentenced to 81 months in prison after pleading guilty to acting as an initial access broker for Yanluang ransomware attacks. The key fact is the role: brokering entry into victim environments that was later monetized by a ransomware as a service operation. This matters because it underscores that disrupting the supply side of ransomware, the brokers who sell footholds, remains a viable lever, even as the broader model persists. Defender takeaway: harden against broker-favored entry points. Close or tightly restrict RDP, enforce phishing-resistant MFA on VPN and SSO, patch perimeter devices and file transfer appliances quickly, and baseline external authentication to detect new-to-tenant logins and token misuse. Treat commodity malware and credential theft as high severity, not just nuisance alerts, because they often precede brokered access sales. Fifth, a public sector compromise in Europe. The Dutch Ministry of Finance confirmed that some of its systems were breached in an attack detected last week, and the incident affects employees. The core facts are a confirmed intrusion, a limited scope statement, some systems, and a focus on employee impact. This matters because finance ministries manage sensitive records and workflows where even partial compromises can cascade into service disruption or data exposure risks if not contained quickly. Defender takeaway: For government entities and their suppliers, validate segmentation between user, HR, and financial systems. Rotate credentials and session tokens tied to affected environments. Tighten egress controls to constrain data exfiltration and ensure logging retention supports a full forensic timeline. Communicate promptly with staff about password hygiene, suspicious contact reporting, and any required account resets. Across these stories, the through lines are consistent. Patch exposed systems quickly, reduce the blast radius of vendor compromises, and focus on initial access controls that frustrate both extortion crews and the brokers who feed them. If this briefing helps you prioritize your next moves, subscribe, share it with your incident response and IT ops leads, and check your internet-facing inventory before the next wave of disclosures hits.